Boo. Now, how much of a dick move would it be if I put an actual jump scare at the end of that? I might still do that, though, somewhere in the video. I'm, of course, not going to tell you where. Rap, tap, tap, Tino. Be prepared. So first things first, you get a blueprint for Harrow from the Chains of Harrow questline, for which you need to unlock the mission Mod in the Void and you need to finish the War Within. The neuroptics are a reward from the spy mission Pago in the Kuva Fortress, the systems drop in defection missions, and the chassis drops from corrupted enemies in fissure missions. Harrow is a supportive Warframe, and despite everything you may have heard, he does not rely on headshots to work. Headshots just make him far more effective. You can still play Harrow even if you can't get consistent headshots. I would actually recommend you do not try and headshot every single enemy, especially if you're in a full party, because that can only end in frustration. And don't get me wrong, it is indeed nice if you can get in a headshot or two, because as I've said already, that makes Harrow far more effective. Just don't try to do it on every single enemy. When it comes to the stats, Harrow is surprisingly beefy. He starts off at 100 health, which goes up to 300 at rank 30, 150 shields, which go up to 450 at rank 30, and 150 armor, so he is by no means squishy. He has 100 energy, which goes up to 150 at rank 30, sprint speed of 1, which is average, and he comes with 3 polarities, 1D, 1 dash, and an additional dash in the aura slot. Harrow's abilities are not complicated, and on their own they are pretty straightforward. Condemn is a nice bit of crowd control that will chain enemies down. Penance allows him to sacrifice all his shields to boost fire rate, reload speed, and give him a little bit of lifesteal. Thurible allows him to drain his own energy to then restore his and his allies' energy by killing enemies. And finally Covenant, which is his most defensive ability because it provides a little bit of invulnerability, which is followed up by a crit buff. But that's not to say that Harrow is an easy Warframe to play. He is very much not. The complexity comes from using the abilities at the right time and comboing them together. And if I were to compare Harrow to Trinity, I would say that Trinity is more of a defensive support, whereas Harrow focuses more on the offensive side. He also has the highest potential shield count out of all the Warframes in the game thanks to his passive ability, which allows him to get double the amount of overshields you would normally get. So don't be surprised if you see him running around with 3,500 shields. And I think I've been rambling for long enough already, so let's finally check out his abilities. So Harrow's first ability is called Condemn, where he swings his Thurible, sending forward a line that will chain down all enemies within 20 meters for 6 seconds. Each enemy hit will restore 150 shields to Harrow, and it can accumulate overshields. And unlike with most crowd control abilities, hitting an enemy with Condemn forces them into a certain pose, making it much easier for you to headshot them. The duration of the crowd control is affected by power duration mods, the amount of shields restored per enemy hit is affected by power strength mod, and the size of the wave, which includes both the width and the length, is affected by power range mods. It's also a one-handed ability, so you can use it while performing many other actions like reloading and jumping around. This ability is absolutely amazing, and it may very well be the best first ability in the entire game. The wave has a decent size, chained enemies are very easy to headshot, it restores overshields, and it's also very cheap, so you can spam it. My only issue with it right now, because I'm pretty sure this is going to get ironed out eventually, is that sometimes Harrow sends the wave in the wrong way, especially if you're not facing the direction of your crosshair. And if there is a significant height difference between you and the enemy, the wave will sometimes fail to chain them down. But, as I've said already, this is probably going to get ironed out eventually. Harrow's second ability is called Penance, where he sacrifices all his shields and boosts his fire rate by 25%, his reload speed by 50%, and he gains 5% lifesteal, which will restore health to all allies within the affinity sharing range. The fire rate bonus, reload speed bonus, and lifesteal are affected by power strength, and the duration of the ability is affected by power duration, but also the amount of shields that you've sacrificed. And the way this works is you get 1 extra second on the buff for every 100 shields or overshields you sacrifice. Also, the amount of healing you're pulsing out by doing damage is displayed right underneath the crosshair. This ability is awesome, but also very dangerous, because running around without shields is not the smartest thing to do, and this is where the timing portion of Harrow and also his other abilities come in. Because everyone can sacrifice their shields in the middle of an enemy army and immediately die, but if you're not a complete derp, you can immediately cast Condemn and restore those shields, or even use his fourth ability, which we will talk about later. You can also recast Penance even if the buff is already active, which will add extra duration to it up to a maximum of 60 seconds. Now this is where your ability to headshot enemies starts to pay off, because headshots do far more damage than body shots, so if you have the penance buff active and you headshot enemies, you're gonna do far more healing than if you're just body shotting them. But as I've said in the beginning, sometimes, especially if you're in a full party, it's better to just body shot the enemies rather than running around them and trying to headshot every single one. And finally, you can't do anything while you're casting Penance, which is pretty bad, especially since it sacrifices all your shields. And if you're bothered by that, you can use Natural Talent or Speed Drift to speed up the casting animation. Harrow's third ability is called Thurible, where Harrow spins his Thurible, draining his own energy to then restore energy to himself and his allies by killing enemies. The way this works is you press the ability button once and Harrow starts spinning his Thurible. This will display an indicator to the right of Harrow showing you how much energy you are going to get per kill. Once you either run out of energy or you press the ability button again, you will get a 30-second buff that will restore the indicated amount of energy for every enemy you kill to you and all your allies within 15 meters. The ratio of energy drained versus energy restored is affected by power strength and power efficiency, but also if you kill the enemy with a headshot, the amount of energy you and your allies get is quadrupled, so this is yet another ability where headshotting the enemy is far more effective. The duration of the buff you get by spinning your Thurible is affected by power duration, and the radius of the aura in which you restore energy to your allies as well is affected by power range mods. Thurible is also a two-handed ability, so you can't shoot or use other abilities while you're charging it. All you can do is just run around. This ability is awesome. It's Harrow's way to sustain his own energy but to also provide energy for his allies, but it can be a little bit frustrating to play with if you're running with an unorganized party where you spend all your energy channeling Thurible and then Bunchy's like, LOL, Quake. And if that happens, which in public matches it will, a lot, you are kinda screwed, which is why I would always recommend saving a little bit of energy so you can cast it again. And just like any other ability that restores energy, aside from Limbo's Rift of course, because consistency is a thing other people have to worry about apparently, if your allies have an active energy drain on them from something like World on Fire, they will not get energy from this. So if you're Ember and you're playing with Harrow and you're like, where's my energy, you boob? Turn off your World on Fire, you bimbo. Now this is another ability that combos really well with Harrow's first ability, Condemn, because it chains the enemies down in such a way that it makes it much easier for you to headshot them. So what you can do is spin the Thurible and charge your buff, then sacrifice your shields with Pennant and then condemn the enemies, which will restore the sacrificed shields, but also line the enemies up so you can get loads of energy by headshotting them. And finally, every time you kill an enemy, you will get an indicator telling you how much energy you restored above your ammo counter. And you can recast the ability even if you already have the buff active, which will just override the old values with the new ones. And Harrow's fourth and final ability is called Covenant, where Harrow jumps into the air, spins around, and makes him and all the allies within his affinity sharing range immune for 6 seconds. Once the invulnerability period is over, Harrow and his allies will get a 12-second buff that boosts their critical chance. And the crit buff is calculated based off the amount of damage Harrow and his allies took during the invulnerability period, where every 80 points of damage will translate into 1.25 bonus crit chance. Now, while the bonus caps out at 50% flat bonus crit chance, it's quadrupled on headshots, so if you manage to get the full buff, which is not that difficult if you go versus higher level enemies, you will have guaranteed red crits on headshots. Ouch. Now, the duration of both the invulnerability as well as the buff you get after the invulnerability are affected by power duration, and the amount of crit chance bonus you get for every 80 damage prevented is affected by power strength. And power range mods do nothing for this ability, since both the invulnerability as well as the buff application is only limited by the affinity sharing range. So the only way to increase the range of Covenant, just like with Trinity's Blessing, is by using the Disciplined Approach passive from the Vazarian Focus School. Now, the effectiveness of this ability will vary wildly based on what you do with it and what kind of teammates you have, because if once again you are in a public squad and as soon as you use Covenant, Bunchy goes lol Quake, you're not gonna get a lot from it. But you can also just use it at the wrong time, which is really bad because you cannot recast the ability while you have either of the two buffs active. So if, for example, you use it during a wave transition in a defense mission, it's not gonna do a damn thing for you. The casting animation is also pretty long and it locks you down, and if you're once again bothered by that, you can either use natural talent or speed drift to speed it up. And finally, it once again works really well with Harrow's other abilities, more specifically Penance, because what you can do with this is run into a group of enemies, use Penance to sacrifice your shields, then immediately use Covenant, which will shield you from the damage, and then spam Condemn, which will restore your shields before the invulnerability runs out. And finally, we come to the conclusion. Would I recommend Harrow? Yes. Yes, I would. I think Harrow is a lot of fun and the gameplay is really interesting. However, if you just want to do public squads and you don't intend to communicate with your team whatsoever, you're probably not gonna have a lot of fun, and I would probably stick to Trinity instead, because other people will just screw you over. And it is very much unintentional. Well, yes, some people will try to screw you over because lols, but other people will just screw you over by doing their thing. You know, you channel all your energy into Thurible, or you pop Covenant and suddenly Banshee starts quaking, or Equinox pops his Mend and Maim, or there is Ember running around with World on Fire, either stunning everything or killing it. And all the energy you've channeled into Thurible, or the shields you sacrificed to heal everyone, or, you know, even getting a cooldown on Covenant does nothing. It's really satisfying where everything goes right. You know, you pull off a full combo, enemies are chained down, you are healing everyone, you are restoring everyone's energy, and everyone has a massive crit buff. But it does get kind of frustrating when it doesn't work, when you're running around trying to kill at least something so you get enough energy to at least recast Thurible and try it again. So please bear that in mind. If everything is going your way, playing Harrow is incredibly satisfying, but when it's not, it can be really frustrating. And that's pretty much it for the video, so I thank you very much for watching as always. I hope you've enjoyed the video and it was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.